and it let out this blood-curdling, guttural scream.
On the side of the road, he sees a deer carcass and something eating on it, which he thought was a bear. And as the lights hit it, it stood up. And, like, this gives me chills talking about it. He said it stood up and it had the face of a man.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bigfoots of America podcast show. I'm your host, Brian Sawyer, coming at you. Hey, man, this is episode 47. We are just barreling towards episode 50. And to me, that's a milestone. And who do I have to thank for that milestone? All of you, of course, the audience, the eyewitnesses, you know, the old saying, it takes a village. And like I always say, you can't have Bigfoot without the eyewitnesses. And finally, I got this gal on here. A lot of you probably know her, Cheri Radu. She's a moderator of our private group, which is called Bigfoots of Michigan, Bigfoots of America podcast show on Facebook. She's a moderator there. She has her own episode. It is episode 1 of season 2 in the Bigfoots of Michigan TV series. And boy, we just wanted to finally kind of formalize getting her on the podcast show. And she has so much to talk about. You know, gosh, since I've met her, it has been a fantastic journey. And, she's one of these people where you can't say enough good things about them. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and bring Bigfoot eyewitness Cheri Radu onto the platform. Hey, Cheri, you there?
Hi, Brian.
What's going on?
Well,
A
we
whole
can
lot
talk
of
a
stuff.
whole lot of stuff right now.
All right, so for the folks at home, so I always got to remind myself that this is also an audio-only platform, even though you can see us right now, and this will be released on our YouTube channel called Bigfoots of America, and also the Channel 12 TV network. This is also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So I wanted to make sure I got you on this platform, formalize an interview so I can release it on those platforms as well. So with that said, Cheri, man, let's get started. We met a phone call or a text or a messenger. I forget how, but you were like, I couldn't believe it because usually I think at that time, people who were telling me about their Bigfoot experiences or sightings, they were like, they'd happened sometime in the past, anywhere from, 1 or 2 years to 30 years in the past. You get a hold of me and you're like, oh my gosh, I just saw one. So as quick as I could, which ended up being 3 days? I can't remember. I got up there to your location and we filmed. Oh my gosh, how wonderful is that? We filmed just a few days after your sighting of a Sasquatch, and we found a huge footprint to correlate it. We always look for the tangible evidence for the folks at home. There's so many naysayers out there, so we do the best. And now, of course, you're a team member, so we all do the best we can to try to bring the best information to the general public out there and to our audience members. So now, with that said, I know this is interesting for you because we've talked about it so many times before, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to take it from how this all started. And you can start wherever you want, from when you're a child, or you can start right from the Bigfoot sighting or your UFO sightings. So it's all you, girl. Go for it.
Well, thank you, Brian. Well, so much to share. My whole life has been extraordinary as far as paranormal activity. And starting as young as 5 years old, from what I can even remember. Um, and I'm a twin, so there is such thing as a twin power. By the way, I just want you all to know that's true. Uh, but here, what was really interesting is when I was really young, there were incidents where um, I'd be home alone, or not alone, but by myself in the house, and I would hear knocking at the front door, and I had answered the door, and there were two men dressed in black. What you hear, the men in black folks look just like that, in an overcoat and in a hat, and they were standing there, and they didn't say anything. It was telepathically conveyed to me, and they were there to share information, and they asked to come in. Now, I had learned when I was really young, somehow I had known this information, that you never invite a stranger in your home, not because they're a stranger, but you never invite anybody you don't know, uh, because you could be inviting the devil in. So the devil can enter into your home by invitation only. So
Mm.
I had learned this early on, and when they were talking to me telepathically, I just said no, and I shut the door. Well, the door was a wooden door, and it had a locking screen door, and they're knocking on the wooden door, and the screen door was locked.
Mm.
So
Oh
I
my.
was, yeah. So then I thought to myself, well, they were obviously reading my thoughts. And so I had backed away from the door, and I walked away and told my older siblings, hey, there's people at the door. And they went right to the door and opened it, and there were nobody there. So, it's kind of started with these men in black incidences. It also started with angels. Between my twin and I shared a room, and we would be visited by this angelic woman. It looked like a woman, that would visit us every night, and she would make sure that she would watch over us at the foot of the bed. She would stay there. What was interesting is we could never really see her face, but we can certainly see her. She was in a long, flowy gown, and she said, I'm here to watch over you while you sleep. So I called it more of the guardian angel type of visitations that would occur. And Susie and I, we would talk to her. That was my twin. And we would talk to her. And my mother would hear us talking in the bedroom. We're supposed to be sleeping, right? And she'd come in, who are you talking to? And we're like, to the lady standing there. And she, that kind of would scare my mother. Um, but, she started realizing that my twin and I had these abilities that she was witnessing along the way, and it was concerning her. So she would tell us, she'd ask us, what happened today, or who did you see today? And we would share with her these visitations and such. And after a while, she was really, I would say, intrigued by it, because she's never shared anything about her abilities with us, and the fact that we had, I would call it, inherited her gifts, um, was really um, was really revealing for her to know that we had acquired these type of psychic abilities and telepathic abilities to speak. So it started to evolve from that young age up into now. I still have encounters, but what was interesting, and I really found this to be probably one of the most, I think, prominent visitations and interactions I have had with the spirit world, was back in 2006. I was on a I was with my Corvette team, and it was a club that we had, and we had quite a few Corvette members, and we decided to do a road trip when we were coming out of Auburn Hills and heading up to Traverse City. So along the way, we would stay at these places. Well, one of the destinations was the Dodary Hotel in Clare. So we drove and drove up, and we finally parked all our cars in the parking lot, and they were waiting for our club to show up and such. And so I had grabbed my bag, my luggage, my bag, and I was with one of my friends, and we were walking together, and we approached the double doors that were towards the back of the back part of the building where we entered in the back way. And the doors, the double doors were like French doors. They kind of opened up, and it was kind of strange. I saw it, and I didn't know if my friend had witnessed it because she was talking to me. And so I noticed it had opened, and all of a sudden this stench of death came out, and I stopped. I stopped in my foot tracks. I mean, I was like, and she looked at me. She says, "Are you okay?" And I don't talk about these things openly with just anybody. Here I am on the screen telling everybody, but when it happened, I had put my hand over my face, and I went, "No." And she's like, "What's wrong?" And I was looking, and there was a man kind of dressed in clothing of like maybe the 1940s kind of style, kind of that really kind of snazzy look, And he says to me, he goes, "This is where they killed me." And I'm like, "What?" And I'm like looking at my friend because she doesn't see this man. I see him. He's standing at the door, and he says, "This is where they killed me." And I was like, "Okay, so what is going on?" I actually literally felt like I had walked into another dimension when that happened. And I could be in, and I felt like I was in both present state, current, like in the present, and the present world, and then in also walking in another like a dual path into another dimension where this spirit was walking. And I thought at the time, why, what is going on here? Because I wasn't familiar with the history of this hotel or anything. I was very naive to all of it. And I just proceeded to walk in, and we kind of walked through the doors together, and we were going to go to check in. And if you've ever been to the Dory, it's a very beautiful front entry lobby area, and then where you check in, it's just gorgeous there. So we were all kind of walking in as a group, and we're filling up that lobby area because there's a lot of us there. So I'm standing in the lobby, and I decided there's like a staircase that comes into that lobby area. So I was just standing. I just took and stepped up onto the bottom stair of this staircase, right? But it was kind of closed off. It was chained off not to go up there. So I was just standing on the bottom step, and I'm looking at all the people in the lobby checking in. And I'm standing there, and I see this man, and he's to my right. And I'm like, and he's very sharply dressed. He's a short man, and he had a white suit on, like a white suit, and he had the jacket, the jacket over his arm, and he had his hat on, and it was kind of cocked to the side. Just that typical look of the 40s. And he was very snazzy looking. And he just walked around at the bottom of that stairway right in front of me. And I'm looking down at him because he's kind of short. And I'm watching him walk out towards the front door. And this little boy was standing with his father. And I noticed the little boy is watching the same person I'm watching walk out the front door. And he was definitely a gangster looking guy from the 40s. And I'm like, well, if that little boy sees him, then I see him, then I'm not just losing it here. So I was like, what the heck's going on here? So long story short, as we go and check in and everything, and I could tell that I just was not right. I felt off the whole entire time. And we had a big banquet dinner at that evening in the restaurant there, in the bar restaurant area. So I went ahead, and we had made our reservations, and so we had to be down there at a certain time. So we got ready, and we went down to sit at the bar in that area to take our seats. And we're there, I kind of forgot about all of it. And then we ordered, and I said, well, I'm going to use the restroom before our food gets here. So, because I wanted to wash my hands, whatever. And I get up and I walk, and in the back of the way that's set up is they have a beautiful banquet room in the back, but it wasn't occupied. All the lights were out, they were off. But the banquet room is surrounded by beautiful big glass windows. So when I walked back there, you could see through, and you could see all the big lights coming in, from the parking lot, shining everywhere. And I just kind of looked up, and I had this very strong smell of cigarette smoke. What you couldn't smoke in the restaurant, but it hit me so hard. It just startled me because it was so strong. And I'm like, well, that's odd. And when I looked up, it was this man dressed in a that very double-breasted look, with a hat, and he was smoking a cigarette, and all I could see, he was backlit, so he was dark, but I could barely see his facial features, and he was smoking a cigarette, and I could actually see the glow of that cigarette, and I'm like, what is going on here? And he looked up kind of like that, and he blew the smoke, and you could see the smoke in this room, and I was like,
Wow.
yeah, I go, wow. I go, so I kind of went, well, okay, I get what you're doing here now. I said, what is it you want from me? What is it I need to know? Why are you continuing to interact with me? And, he didn't really say much. If he did, I don't really recall exactly how he said it, but it was that we just wanted you to know we are here. And I was like, okay. I said, okay. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. And I kind of just went in to the restroom, but there were other people around me. And there were other women going to the restroom, and they're walking by me, and nothing. Like they didn't see anything. So I went back to the table, and by then I was just pretty much, okay, I've had enough of this. I was like, um, so nothing, at that point, it was very just strange. I was excited to just finally leave there and move on to our next destination, which we did the next day. But that whole encounter was very strange. So that was in 2006. In 2012, I think it was, I'm perusing Facebook, and I come across a post from a gentleman that was really just loved the Purple Gang. And he researched them, and he always wanted to learn the stories. And so he had posted this picture of this man that I saw that was the one that said they killed me. And I was like, what the heck? So I'm looking at this picture, and it was just like as if I was standing there 6 years before, and all this energy just flushed right back to me. All the visions, everything that happened just came back. And I go, and he was asking in his post, do you know this man? And I was like, wow. So I replied to him, and I said, I know who that is. And him and I started to message back and forth, and he says, how do you know this man? Blah, 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 blah. And I go, well, I didn't know who he was, so I was really reluctant on telling him how I had met this man.
Mhm.
But I eventually kind of spoke, I kind of told him the story, and he says, well, do you know this person? And he shot over a bunch of pictures to me. And he says, I want you to look at this picture. And it was a group picture of the Purple Gang members in that foyer, in that lobby area back in the day, all standing in line next to each other. Says, do you recognize any of the other people? And there was in that picture that short guy that had walked out through the front lobby door. And the
Whoa.
little boy and I saw, yes. And I go, yeah, I know that guy, and I know. So he was like, well, he was blown away, and I started telling him the stories of all the stuff that he had. He says, well, I'm an investigator. I'm a paranormal investigator. I went, oh my gosh, how could this be, Brian?
Yeah.
6 years later, we're crossing paths because he's a paranormal investigator, and he's investigating the purple game. I'm like, what?
Crazy.
And so we cross paths this way. I mean, I really believe that there's this level of intervention that, if you're meant to meet somebody, you're meant to meet somebody, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
Right.
him and I started to talk a lot about it, and he started showing me other things, and I go, "What do you know about this?" He goes, "What do you know about the Purple Gang?" And I go, "Well, the only thing I know about it is my grandmother dated one of the members. That's all I know, and I never met him." So, and she
Wow.
was a talk of the family. That's all I know. But that's all I really knew about the Purple Gang. I didn't know much about them, and because I was a little kid. So we started talking, and he says, "Well, I am going to." When I had mentioned this whole thing about me meeting these people at the notary, he says, "Well, I'm going there to do a paranormal investigation where you set up all the equipment, right? And you tape and you record noises and whatever." And so I had shared what that gentleman had said when he said they killed me. He had shown me where he was at, but I didn't know where he was at in that building. I just could describe the place. And
Right.
that would have been way back in the 40s or whenever it was. So I explained this to this gentleman, and I said, "Well, it's down the stairs, but it's not going to be in that. It's going to be in a dirt floor area. It's going to be very confined area. It's like as if you were to stand in a closet almost, and it's very confined, and he would be in that area." So lo and behold, somehow he finagled Dodry Hotel management to let him do a midnight recording from 12 to, I think, 3 in the morning, because that's the
Whoa.
spiritual active times that they want to use those
Right.
times in the night to
Right.
record these activities. So he produced the show, and it is out there. But he actually captured voices in an area that he had found that kind of looked like the area I was describing. He had to squeeze through this. It looked like the they were building walls, but they didn't match the wall length, and he had to sneak through it, and it was real narrow. And he snuck through it, and there was like this little room there, and he stuck all the equipment in there. And he picked up recordings, and he picked up all kinds of stuff in there, and he had recorded that and taped that documentary. I had later on, he wanted me to join him at that investigation, and I just couldn't make it at the time. But um, he I had contacted the management over at Dodry, and I said, "This is what happened to me. Are you having hauntings? Are you having this?" And they would not comment. They would not admit it
Wow.
because they don't want to scare the people, I believe. But I
Oh,
told them what
sure.
had happened, right? And I don't blame them. They're in business, But
Right.
that was probably one of the most amazing, I think, most amazing paranormal experience I have ever had. That was just so vivid, so interactive, and then to come and find out 6 months or 6 years later that someone's looking for him, and then I show the pictures, and I'm like, what the heck? It was like
Yeah.
there was no time between the 6 years. It just was then and then. And that was just something that just really, I never forgot it. It still gives me the heebie-jeebies in a lot of ways.
I bet.
But
That's a great story. Gosh.
yes, and the fact that it's associated to our history here in Michigan, the Purple Gang and all of that.
Yep. Yep. Without a doubt.
That's amazing. So from that, then it's just kind of went on and I honestly think a lot of too, because in that time frame of 2006 and around that time frame, like early 2000s, there was a lot of activity, and during that time, I had two UFO sightings, but they weren't just sightings; these were very close to me. They were over
Wow.
my head, you know. And having those type of experiences all happening all around that same time frame where it was very active paranormal activity, and then having the two UFO sightings that were 3 days apart or 2 days apart at the
What
time.
were what were those like? What did the craft look like?
Well, the first what was interesting, and I believe it was the same craft, was we were driving down 75 just south of Grand Blanc. So we're heading south on 75 from Grand Blanc. And,
Hmm.
it was right before Holly Road, because I remember that because we had to get off because it was weird. But when we were driving there, I had looked out. I was passenger, and I looked out to my right, and it was a very clear night. And I see this black, like a black craft, but it only had like a really small, like pin lights in the corners, and it was kind of shaped, I would say like a spade, kind of like that.
Hmm.
But it was huge. And it was hovering over the tree line that we were driving along. So, and I could see it. It was a ways out. It was probably, so how tall are trees? Maybe 500 feet off the ground, maybe. But it was huge.
Okay.
And I'm
Right.
looking at this because we were by Bishop Airport is just north of there, right? So I'm thinking, is
Yep.
this a plane coming in? Is this like a plane coming in really low and it's trying to land? Because it was the first thing I thought because it was so big. But then I'm looking at it and I realize the shape of this thing isn't a plane and the lights are pointed down, like down to the ground. And it just, all of a sudden, it was just sitting there. And then it glided. It glided. Like it still hovered, but it glided over the tree line so smoothly and so swiftly, and it just moved off. Well, I was like, what the heck was that? And so I was like, and I'm like, did you see that? Did you see that? And no, it's like, I don't want to look, Rick was like, no, I'm not looking, and so I get to work and I'm like Googling, I'm like, did anybody see any sightings, because I didn't know. And so I went on to MUFON website, and I'm like, did anybody see anything? So that night, 'cause this was early morning, about 6:30 in the morning. But that during the night, there were 5 globe lights reported at the end of the runway in Pontiac, at the Pontiac airport, and they were glowing there, and they were stationary, and people were reporting these things. And this is when I had witnessed this one in the morning, and I was like, what the heck's going on? So I wanted to go ahead and call MUFON and put the report in, but then I was like, oh, maybe I don't want to do that. So I just let it go. And so 2 nights later, or 2 mornings later, sorry, heading back into work together, and it was foggy. You know how you get that fog that's it's like a low ceiling cloud fog. It's kind of just above the trees, but it's
Yep.
foggy. But
Yep.
at the ground you can still see. So we're driving in, and it's at the same area just south of the Grand Blanc area, and I'm looking up. I'm like looking up at the ceiling, how low the ceiling clouds are, and I'm like, and I just said, wouldn't it be something if that thing is out there? And I just said something, I just kind of made a joke of it. And then all of a sudden I see this light coming through straight down through this cloud cover. And it was coming down, and it was this huge craft, and it was pushing that cloud away, like cloud cover away. And all of a sudden we're underneath this thing, and it looks like chrome, black chrome mirror, like it's mirror, and I could see our truck reflection at the bottom of it. And I'm
Oh
looking up
my
at
gosh.
yes, and that's how close it was. And I'm like, holy cow, it's right above us. And I said, look at that thing, and I'm like, holy smokes! And I could see in the center of this craft that there was like a dome, like a low lit dome, and something was moving inside there. And I was like, what is that? And we're heading south. And at that point, there was a truck coming north, and it's a divided highway, right? And it's quite large. There's like quite a large median in there. This truck slams on his brakes because he's further out, and we're right under this thing. And he does a U-ey, and he cuts in front of us to start going south because he does not want to go what we're under. At that point.
Right.
And we finally get past it, and we caught up with this truck. This truck kind of stopped down the road, and so we stopped down there. And I was like, "What was that?" Because we couldn't, from our vantage point, we're underneath it. I couldn't really. It looked huge. It looked like it spanned across both lanes in that median, which was very wide. Um, that gentleman said that thing was huge, and it looked like like a silver craft, like kind of bowl shaped underneath from his vantage point. But when we were underneath it, it looked more to me like a shape of a mouse, like you use on your computer, kind of that
Wow.
shape. Yeah, and at that point, it was like we're both like going, "What the heck was that?" So we proceeded to work, and by the time I got to work, there were sightings of spacecraft. Not just there though; they were spotting them out in Linden, out in Holly, out in the air. It could be the same spacecraft, who knows? All out in that area. So I had called Bishop Airport, and I said, "Are you sighting any kind of UFOs?" And they wouldn't give me any kind of answers at that point. But I told them that I saw a craft, and it was not that far from the airport, just to let them know, because our
Right.
aircraft are flying in, and I
Yep.
know that they can cloak. So it's like I just wanted somebody to know, hey, this is serious.
That's
So,
right.
so that was all happening all around the same time. That whole, time when I had the paranormal experience at the Dotary, and this was happening. Um, it was just so active then. Um, and then, as you know, Brian, we met how we met, and in 2023, all of a sudden, I'm out. I love Rock County, hunting, and I was on Lake Michigan, and I was out waiting for a sunset because I love to shoot photography, and it was a nice fall day. And it was so beautiful. And I wanted to capture a nice sunset against the shoreline with the leaves changing and everything. So I was out hiking. I hiked out about 2 miles down the shoreline, and I was looking for that right light. And you know how the fall lights are like very golden and bright, and being over the water, it was very big sky.
Yep.
So I'm coming back. So I walked out about 2 miles, and then I said, I'm going to turn around and start heading back from where I had started from. And there were a lot of trees that had fallen over and were reaching out into the water. So the shoreline was not very wide, but it was very rocky. And so kind of treacherous. And I didn't want to walk on treacherous ground like that in the dark because it's hard to see. Plus your depth perception's off and such. So you could trip and fall. So I thought, well, I'm going to head back and I'm going to capture my shots. This is what I've been waiting for the evening. So I had just crossed over, getting back, towards where I started from, and I just crossed over and climbed over all these dead trees, and got through all that, and then I stood up, and I'm like, I, it was like, I could feel it today. It was like somebody was standing right behind me, and I was like, what? So I turn around, and I'm like, there's nobody around. I'm in an isolated area. There's nobody around. And I'm like, what the heck? I feel like something's looking at me. Like when I look, I'm up against a steep embankment. And you're looking up a dune basically. And I thought, that's really odd. So I just kind of started walking out past those fallen trees, and I kind of walked up like 15 feet away. And I'm standing there, and I'm kind of lining up the shot and looking at the lighting and testing my meters. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this huge rock comes flying through the air, and it crashes on the rocks I'm standing on now. These are big rocks. And it shatters these rocks, and pieces are hitting my pant legs, my boots. And it rolls, it with such velocity, it rolled the rock right out into the lake, into the water. And I was like, what the heck? So I'm thinking to myself, if this dune is going to fall, then I don't want to be at the bottom of this thing. That was the first thing I had thought because of all the downed trees. And I said, well, I don't want to be on the bottom of that. So I'll walk down the shoreline further, go, towards where I park and get away from this hillside, because if it's coming down, I don't want to be there. So I walk another 30 yards or whatever, I don't know, 40 yards, whatever. And I go, oh, it's the perfect place. So I was like all ready. So I set up my equipment. I'm laying down onto the shoreline and I'm getting some shots off. But I keep hearing like noises, like up on the bluff. And I'm like, what's going on up there? And I didn't know at the time what it was, like what to call it. I kept saying banging, like banging your trees. And you guys call it tree knock. That's how I learned the language, is tree knocks. And I was hearing this tree knock, but it was very loud, like just like it was smashing like a tree. And I'm like, what the heck? And I'm kind of like bending and looking back at the embankment, and the light is shining up into those tree lines, up on the embankment, and I don't see anything. And I'm like, what is going on up there? But you could hear noise. So I shot off some more pictures, and the light was starting to get really, like, once the sun sets in the fall below the horizon, it gets like this purple light. And I was like, okay, so that lighting is getting dark, and it gets really dark really fast when it hits that point in the fall. So I said, well, I don't want to get caught walking on the beach in the dark. I don't want to trip or anything. So I decided to kind of walk a little further, and I did shoot off a couple other shots. And I further down the shoreline, and I kept hearing I heard another bang up there. It was like, what is going on? So, and being out there by myself, I was like, maybe I need to go home. So I decided to walk back to where I entered onto the beach, and I walked down, I walked to that point, and I had all the equipment out. So I packed it all up in my backpack, and I had about 20 pounds of rock in my backpack at the time. So I had some weight on, and when I had entered onto the beach, I had to walk down this pretty steep embankment. And so I thought, well, I want my hands free because it's steep. I want to be able to grab the trees and kind of pull myself up. And it's about 25, 30-foot embankment up. So that's what I did. And I walked all the way up, and I just crested over that embankment. And I had a headlamp on because it was dark by then. And I get up there, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, thank God that's over with. I was like, I'm already
Right.
out of breath. I'm like, dang, I'm glad I'm going home, after walking all that. And then all of a sudden, to my left, I hear this gruff, like a growl, fuck, like, kind of like, what? And it was loud. And I looked to my left because that's where it came from, and it was close. And I hear this noise, and it's loud, and I'm starting to look up, and I see this tree shaking like a toothpick. I mean, it was like a twig. And I'm like, what the heck is that? I'm looking up. Well, then I start panning down because my light's coming down, and I see this mammothly huge, hairy beast. And when I finally panned down on it, it was moving like sideways, and it looked like it was going to turn and like shoulder that tree. And if he was going to push it down on me, that's how close. I would say I was 30 feet away.
Mm.
And it was that close. And at that point, I was like, my head started saying, these aren't real. That can't be real. Is this really what I'm thinking? But at the same time, I'm like, my body's like, how that, you flee for your life
Fight or
response.
flight. Yep.
Yeah, I'm like on that. I'm like, my legs were moving before I could think of this, think run, I started running, and it says to me, I'm the guardian, the children. And I'm like thinking in my head, how are you doing this? And I'm like, I don't care who you are. I finally run it and get up to my truck, and I whipped the door open. I flung that backpack off like it was nothing. And I hit the start button, and I was backed into my spot. So I started to take off, and I got like broadside to the woods there. And this big branch or stick, I called it, hits the side of my truck and folds the mirror in. And I thought I had run into like part of the tree line. So I stopped for a second because it was dark. I couldn't see what was going on. And then I realized I'm out of here because I'm just on a 2-track in the middle of nowhere. And I just took off, and my head started swirling like, are you serious? These things are real? These things are real? I got to the end of that 2-track, and I stopped, and I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, are you serious? And the only thing that I could think of back in the day was the Patty video. And that was the only thing I could remember, because that's the only thing I ever witnessed in my life was that video, and I never heard anything ever since. So, holy cow. I was like, are you serious? Who? And it just turned into like a whole PTSD moment for me at that
Oh, for
point.
sure.
And I was in this can't be real. And I was struggling with my faith. Like, wait a minute, all this stuff goes through your head, because the reality was, Brian, when I had called you, it was 2 weeks, and then I reached out because you know how it happened, Brian?
Hmm.
I didn't speak or talk to anybody for 2 weeks after that happened. I was silent. Didn't go on Facebook. Didn't do anything. I couldn't. I didn't know what to say. Who would believe me? And
PTSD.
Yes, and I'm like, what? And in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't even believe me. It's kind of like, what's going on here? I can't believe what I saw, but I can't deny it. I can't deny it. So I was struggling for 2 weeks, going, what do I do? What do I do? And get this, Brian, because I have an online store. I said, man, I better check and see if I have sales. So I had to go onto Facebook. And this is no lie. I swear they can read your mind. I think Facebook reads your mind. Out of your feed, you know how you can get those like hey, we have suggestions for you. The first one in the suggestion line was, hey, Bigfoot's of Michigan. I'm like, what? This is really real? Are you serious? Bigfoot's of Michigan? We don't have them here. Those things are out west. Unbelievable, Brian. So I take it upon myself to click on that link. And I enter in, and I said, well, I'll join the group. Oh my gosh. And this is so true, Brian. So I'm reading some of the posts, and I'm like, holy cow, what's up with these people? I'm like, maybe I should just put out my story and just see if it's real. And I just kind of spilled my guts out there, and everyone started responding, and they're like, yeah, that sounds exactly like a Bigfoot. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what? No. And so I had read on I think it was your post, said, I'm investigating these with you. If you want to reach out to me, invite me over, I'll be more than happy to come out. And when I wrote my post and I put it out there, I had said in the bottom of the line, said, well, Brian Sawyer, if you want to reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to share my experience with you. And behold, here we are today, buddy.
Amen. Amen. And what happens there? We go right out to that location, and you're giving us a lowdown. And for everybody at home listening to this, Actually, we re-released Cheri's episode all over Facebook, so it's all over Facebook right now.
Mhm.
And what was so neat is there was a moment, and it just clicked inside of both of us, and I'm like, well, if it was standing there and it was shaking this tree, and this ground is really soft, then more than likely there might be a footprint there. And sure enough, we beeline it right to that spot, and there it is, a
Yeah,
footprint left. And now I believe when they do leave footprints, they know when they're leaving footprints, they know
yeah,
when they're not. That was left there as evidence. So we have a tangible, credible story from a credible eyewitness. We have tangible evidence. And yeah, that episode now is all over Facebook, all over YouTube. It's called The Guardian. It is our episode 2 of season 1. And now from that, Cheri, we have a wonderful family friend group of Bigfooters here in Michigan. And that
mhm.
was my whole goal too, because like I always say, you don't have Bigfoot without the eyewitnesses. And now we've got a wonderful group of people just pouring in. And what's next for 2026? We're doing town hall meetings. We're doing
Yeah,
one in Traverse City and we're
yep,
doing one in Monroe, Michigan. And by March 2nd, I have a big deadline of March 2nd to have all of my past media, digital, film, podcast, all have to be completed and released by then to my people that I'm working with. And yeah, and then we'll start 2026 and we'll get those locations locked down. We know they'll
yeah.
be in Traverse City and Monroe, Michigan, and we're just going to lock down the venues and the dates and the times. And I'm so excited about that. And we're going to do another round of this stuff, man, because it's needed. Cheri, you alone, let's talk ghost encounters. And that's why we're not only we're Bigfoots of Michigan TV series and the Bigfoots of America podcast show, but we are all things paranormal as well. So if you're out there listening, you've had any kind of ghost contact, any kind of UFO sightings, any kind of Bigfoot encounters, let us know. Heck, I've seen a fairy face to face. I've had the quote unquote cliche deal with the devil happen in my living room. So many people have so many spiritual, interdimensional, whatever you want to call them, so many paranormal encounters, and they want to be able to talk about them because it does. You get that PTSD, and you need a platform. You need someone to talk to, and that's what we're here for. I think that's really developed into our main goal. What do you think, Cheri?
Absolutely. And honestly speaking, experiencing what I experienced and then coming to a forum that was so safe to come to. I didn't feel judged. I felt like I was safe. I could share anything with the members and not feel judged at all. And receive the help of
Yep.
understanding and learn from the others as well, because it was all so new to me. I
Yeah.
learned so much being here, and then my own, even my own research and expanding out my knowledge and learning more about it it's fascinating to me. What I've learned in just such a short period of time through the members and through other forums as well. But this
Well,
forum is
you
very safe.
Well, you ready to step onto the crazy side? Are you ready? Am I ready to tell you? Yeah, I just had a Bigfoot visit the other night, and this time it talked to my son.
Wow, there.
So we believe it might be a female too. There's some things that have happened. And so I'm putting the puzzle pieces together and now I've got to investigate it. So let's say I just kind of made up my mind talking to other people what had happened. My son was in his room, he's a gamer, he's an all-nighter. I was at work, he immediately called me. He was like, "Hey dad, something is outside my window talking to me." So I kind of put one and one together. I just recently found some footprints,
Mhm.
tangible evidence to go along with the vocalizations. And so now I need to get back to this one location near me because I do believe it's a female and one or two children at this location. So with that said, I'm going to leave it as to be continued. Now,
Yeah.
I prime the pump, Cheri. Are you ready Yeah, you know what I'm getting at. Are you
Yeah,
ready to talk about Naboo? Are you ready to talk
yes.
about how your activity has increased? And I would love it if you'd go into the correlation of what Naboo originally spoke to you.
Well, it was interesting because the encounter, when I first had the encounter, that encounter was 40 miles away from my home. And next thing I know, I'm starting to have visitations at my house. And because of all of the activities in my head that were going on, he continued to talk to me. The moment we connected at that immediate visit to to some months later, he continued to stay telepathically connected to me and continued to tell me things and show me things and shared this incredible life journey with me to the point where he had brought me back out by myself to the same place. Man, it was scary for me, but at the same time I had to trust what I was being told. And he brought me back to show me what this was all about. I felt like I was chosen to know him and his story, and he needed someone to share it with me, to share with, and he chose me. And that journey continued on into a part two that we have not released yet, Brian. But
That's
it
right.
is it is still, on the deck there, right? But what he had
And
shared,
totally up to you. Totally up
it
to
is.
you.
It is. And I think the time's nearing, but maybe not yet. But I think people need to get a little more familiar. But he shared this whole thing, and not only did he share what he knew, when he brought me back to that place, he took me to his place. And that's when the whole reveal happened. And where the
Mm,
understanding of the I'm the guardian of the children really came about.
hmm
And the whole message around that. And he stays connected to me to this day. He comes to my house. His name's Nabu. I asked him, I want to be respectful of you. Please share your name. And he says, well, my name's Nabu. Just like that. Nabu. And I was like, Nabu. And I'm thinking, how do you spell that? And I'm thinking, well, I'll just, okay, thank you. It's nice to meet you. And I appreciate, my name's Cheri. And he would come and he would stand at he would come to my house, and my dogs would go crazy because they know he would be out there. So um he first came to the house. He came cloaked, and he came inside the house. And I think I remember, if you remember, I had immediately got in contact with you because I didn't know what was going
Yep.
on because the stench
Yep.
was so bad. I'm like,
Yep.
what is that? It woke me completely out of a sleep, and my dog was sleeping with me, and and I thought it was her, but it was like, what is this? And she's just like, what is going on? She's like looking around, and I felt the energy source was at the foot of my bed. And I felt that the dimension had changed in the presence there. And I realized something wasn't right. And I said in my head, I mean, telepathic, I said, I'm afraid, and you need to leave. And that's when I had learned through the group and through you that this cloaking, it happens. And it was through, and actually Angie Elizabeth that had told me about it
Yep.
originally, but I didn't understand it till it had happened to me. And that was when he first came to let me know he was here. And then after that, he had revisited. He's revisited many times actually.
Yeah.
Even when we've been,
Friday night.
yeah,
Friday nights when we're doing our Bigfoot live, you've got an
yeah,
activity as well, and
yes,
I'm with you. It seems that there can be a spike of activity if we're engaged in, like you see me looking out the window right now
yeah,
because I had some activity. I was waiting in the green room for you to show up, and there's no wind out here today, but I'm
yeah.
having activity behind me,
See,
in this studio I have here.
hmm
And I'm like, okay, if you're out there, and you could be, because my son just heard you speak. I'm having Cheri on tonight, so
Bring it on.
Exactly. And just to add on too, I was so happy to go back out with you. For everybody at home, we actually filmed a part 2. We haven't released it yet, but I was happy to get back out there. And then we
Yeah.
found what I would
Yes.
call one of Naboo's shelters.
Mhm.
They're like a tree blind type of structure, and its location. The
Yes.
location of it was right on the money. And there's more to that story. If you decide to share it someday, we will do that. But I'll leave it at that. So we have found evidence, and
Yeah.
yeah, you have been a wonderful eyewitness, and now a friend, member of the
Thank
team.
you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful to have you on, and I'm looking forward to 2026. I take everything in a year to year basis, and if this platform is a benefit to people, then we're going to keep it going, because as we learn, look, nobody has all the answers. Okay, if you want, because I've even evolved a little bit, and I have to keep open after my fairy sighting. After you had the mind speak, then I have the mind speak, and so
Yeah.
things happen, and you have to I try not to be ignorant and just a bullish with my understanding and my belief. I do believe these are some sort of possible human hybrid creature being. Yes, there are good ones and bad ones, and you hit the nail on the head, Sherry, when you said, and some of them just want to tell their story. Like, we're humans and we want to tell people about our story. They
Yes.
want to be heard, they want to tell their story.
It's so true. He shared a lot. He shared a lot, and I think maybe we ask the members, are they ready to hear the next
Yeah.
part? Maybe it's time. Maybe they're ready. I don't, Brian, we don't know. You know,
Uh,
it's
yeah,
so
I'm,
much.
a, li- I am not. My thing too is I don't pressure people. I want you
No,
to know that I'm behind you, and now that all of
yeah,
our understanding has increased, that this is quite the bigger world than we ever
yes.
imagined. I'm ready to release it, but that still is up to you. I can happily. I'm about to start editing, for season 3. And I would love to make it a part of season 3, but I'm gonna leave that up to you, man. I'm looking
Hey,
forward to
buddy.
2026.
Hey, buddy. They want to know. Come to the town hall.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, so Traverse City. So let's talk about
Yeah,
that. We'll
sure.
touch on that for the folks at home right now. We want the word spread throughout Michigan. We're going to have 2 town halls as of right now that we know of: Traverse City, Monroe, Michigan. Sherry, you are helming up the Traverse City
So,
location.
yeah.
Yep, we will have nobody famous there. We're going to have our eyewitnesses there, speaking about their encounters, whoever wants to show up. And that is priming the pump for anyone who wants to come and show up and get up in front of the microphone in a safe forum and tell your ghost story, or your UFO sighting, or your Bigfoot encounter. Tell your story. Come on, I'm a guy who's had a fairy sighting. I keep reminding myself of that, because I'm like, dude, who else do you know has had a fairy sighting? And I'm like, no one. So,
Yeah.
yeah, this is a crazy world we're living in, and we try to also, even though we have fun with this and keep it lighthearted, it is also a very serious subject, because, like you, Sherry, you had the PTSD. It
Yeah.
affects people in very diverse ways. It is scary. These things are stepping into reality from what we used to think were just mythology, legends, and fairy tales. But now we're learning just how real these creatures are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who would have thought? I would have never thought that would have ever happened to me.
Oh, exactly. And you know, it's increasing. We both have Native American blood, and we want to honor
Mhm.
that. I'm Cherokee, you're Lakota, is it?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and so we try to honor some of those old ways, but also
Mhm.
we're also Christians, so we need to have that firm Christian foundation. But now it's just expanding our knowledge and awareness of these things. And like I always say, I just want the future generations to know. I want my boys to be prepared that, yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff out here, and we're just beginning to understand all of that. Hey, with that said, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, Cheri. I can never talk to you enough, as you can tell. Um, but but let's talk about you. I just released your season 2, episode 1 again on the Facebook platform. So it's all over there. But Cheri, where can people learn more about you, and how can they contact you and find you?
Oh, any folks, call, you can contact me through the Bigfoot of Michigan group, the member group, and you can message me under Cheri Radu. I am available. Messenger is good, or or we can contact Brian and he'll know where I'm at.
Most definitely,
You're
most
fine.
definitely. And yeah, and get prepared. I think we're going to do it September and October for the town hall meetings. That way, it'll give us plenty of time to prepare,
Yes.
find the exact, the correct venue, and then, yeah, all of that. So, Cheri, I'm going to go ahead and put you back into the green room. I'll be there in a second. All right.
All right. Thank you.
You got it. All right, everybody. That is episode 47. Cheri Radu has just been a wonderful part of the Bigfoots of Michigan TV series and the Bigfoots of America podcast show. And yeah, we're going to keep growing this thing. Like I always say, we're not here to compete with other people. We're here to build a healthy platform where people can come and share their experiences in a safe forum. And that's really what we're all about. So, as always, stay tuned for another episode of the Bigfoots of America podcast show, and we'll see you next time.